one of the things that I have learned through this process, after working with so many women, is that most of them have never known what it's like to not be on a diet. And so because of that, it's really kind of become my mission to help women find a balance between fun and effective as they seek out their health and fitness goals, but also to help them lose weight and keep it off for good. Let's see here. Only know of reverse dieting now, thanks to you. All right. Well, we're going to get into that. We're going to talk through what that looks like, what it means here in just a second. So today I want to chat with you all about the reasons why diets fail, first and foremost. And then I'm going to introduce this concept called nutritional periodization. So why I was curious to know if you guys have heard of that before is because I think it's kind of one of those things that hasn't been talked about in great amounts, at this point. I just think it's kind of one of those things that's newer. People are starting to talk about it more, and maybe, it's not necessarily a new concept. It's just that, I think it was like performance athletes and, people who are like bodybuilders were more into these different phases or cycling through their nutrition in order to, enhance their performance or reach their optimal body composition and that kind of thing. But it, in fact, is something that I think we should all be aware of and understand and participate in. So I'm going to talk about that here in a second. HCZ is extreme restriction, ultra low calorie diet of 500 calories a day. Holy smokes. All right, faster way to fat loss. We definitely do not do that in the faster way. I can tell you that right now. I don't even know how you survive on 500 calories a day. That's like one meal for me. I've heard of maintenance, but not the other stages. Okay, good. So yay. I feel like, you guys are going to learn a whole lot today, and I'm really glad to be able to teach you guys some of my tricks here. Okay. So here's a really alarming statistic for you. 95% of diets fail. Okay. Diets fail. 95% of them. Most of us within the first 1 to 5 years will regain the weight that we lost on those said diets. Okay. So, but the thing is like, even I've said it a million times, diets don't work. Okay. Well, that's not technically true. They technically work. Of course they work. If you are eating 500 calories a day, by golly, you're going to lose weight. Okay. It does not mean diets. They do work. Okay. They work. If you're in a caloric deficit, it will yield results. The problem is that they don't last. Okay. It's not that they don't work. They don't last. They're not sustainable. Diets are made to keep you stuck. They leave you feeling frustrated and confused and feel like you have to restrict even further in order to see progress. So, and the saddest part about this is that most women, especially, I'm sure men think this too, but women, we're really hard on ourselves. We always want to be perfect. We think that we are superheroes. We have to be that for a lot of people in our lives. And we feel like we are failing, and that the reason we have failed said diet is because it's us. Okay. So that we think that we are the problem, and that the reason we can't sustain the weight loss is because we don't have enough willpower, or the reason we can't be consistent is because we just lack motivation or discipline. We think it's a me problem. It's not you. It is your diet that has failed you. Okay. So, I want to talk through some of the things that I see often, and I feel like you guys are going to resonate with, at least one of these probably, and you guys can tell me in the chat feature if you do or not. But let me see what's over here. I've heard of them, but don't know exactly how to incorporate the stages and when and why. All right, we'll get into that. Okay, so if you have been, you guys can say yep, or yep, that's me, whatever you want to say. But if you've been dieting your whole life, which honestly, I feel like that's probably everybody here. If you've been eating 1,200 calories or less and not seeing results, If you have done every fad diet known to man in order to lose weight really quick, only to continue to gain the same 10 pounds over and over and over again, if you are tired of being hungry, like starving all the time, if you have even reached your goal, but then you stop the diet, okay, so you've done the Optavia and then you stopped, or the Beachbody or the Weight Watchers or the whatever it is, and you stop, and then you go back to your old habits, and then you gain all the weight back, okay? If you think that if you can just do a little bit more, or if you can just work a little bit harder, or if you can be a little bit more disciplined, how many times have you guys said that to yourself? Like, if I could just do more, if I could just spend a little bit more time on the treadmill, if I could just get myself to eat a little bit better or a little bit less, you know, I could see results. If I could just be more disciplined. Okay, if that's you, let me know. If you have hit a plateau and have no clue what to do next, okay, you've done all the things, you are following the rules, you know, of your said diet, and you are at a true plateau, you have been consistent and nothing's happening, let me know. If you're constantly starting over and over again, every single Monday, I'll start Monday. You know, you start off the week great, you end the week blowing it up, and then you say, I'll start again on Monday. Maybe that's you. Or here's a good one, and I'm sure that a lot of us here can relate. You think your metabolism is broken, or that it's irreparable. Is that a word? Irreparable? I'm going to go with it. I think that is something that is a huge myth that we need to bust today, because your metabolism is not broken, okay? Your metabolism is simply doing its job. It is adapting. So when you restrict your caloric intake, it downregulates. And we're going to talk about what that looks like and what that means, and how it is flexible and adaptable in both a good and a bad way. Okay. So, you know, a lot of women get into their 40s, their 50s and beyond, and they think, you know, I can't see those results. I can't have that, or I can't look the way I want to look or feel the way I want to feel, because my metabolism is just broken. It's just part of being old. It's part of getting older. And that's not true at all. Your metabolism is a really cool thing. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. So let's see here. So yeah, you guys are, yep. Until the faster way. Yes, I'm so glad to hear that. That's me. Thought dieting was normal life. Yep, same. A little bit more is me all the way. Yeah, I've hit a plateau. I think now with menopause, it's just patience needed, 1000%. Just because you are seeing results slowly doesn't mean that you're not seeing results. And I think that setting a proper expectation, especially in the different seasons of life, for women, is really important. Yeah, the cycle is constant. Yep. Yes, hit a plateau, gaining muscle, but not losing fat. Okay. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing. But at some point we can, you know, kind of turn the dial. But I think you're going to learn that there's seasons in this whole cycle of dieting where your goal isn't fat loss anymore or weight loss necessarily, and that your goal should be gaining muscle. And I'm going to explain why that's so important in regards to your metabolism. All right. Yes, I've even resorted to RX diet pills for several years. The least I've ever weighed, but also the least I've ever eaten. Right. The plateaus are very well thing for me, especially since I'm now, in menopause. Okay. Definitely thought my metabolism was broken. Okay. I saw great results with Fast-Away initially, but I think I didn't switch to maintenance ever and stayed in a caloric deficit for so long. Now I've plateaued. Okay. Well, I'm going to teach you how to get out of that plateau today. Everything you say hits home. I'm nervous to take measurements because I'm afraid I won't see progress, and that will be discouraging. I understand that. All right. So I've been doing Fast-Away for 4 years and it's worked great except for the last year. Weight gain around the midsection. Is it a plateau or is it perimenopause? It could very well be a combination of both. I've lost and gained large amounts of weight multiple times in my life. I actually feel guilty when I'm not trying to lose weight. Okay. So as we get into the different phases of the dieting cycle, hopefully you will come away from this with a good, solid understanding of why you need to have different goals at different times in the cycle in order for you to ultimately see that long-term success and stop the yo-yo dieting, the losing and gaining the same amount of weight over and over again. So yay, I'm excited, you guys. This training, if you guys resonated with any of those things that I just mentioned, this training is for you, okay? And I think that everybody here can raise their hand and say, I've been there, I've done that, I've got the t-shirt. So here's the problem with fad diets and quick fixes, okay? The thing is that, as I mentioned, they set you up to be stuck. You have to continue to either buy their products in order to keep doing the thing, or, you know, with Optavia, even, I hate to like diss on other programs, but holy moly, that one, you guys, you know, you have to continue to buy their packaged food items, or it may be shakes that you have to do, or even pills or wraps, you know, supplements. They want you to continue to buy into their products in order for you to get the results that you're looking for. The other thing is that they're not individualized. So it's kind of like cookie cutter, you know, everybody fits into this one mold. Everybody does the same thing. There's no individualized or personalized approach to them. And they don't teach you anything. So it's, yeah, I mean, everybody wants to be told what to do and how to do it. And you ultimately, we're all here for the transformation. I get that. But then it leaves you with no education around food or lifestyle. And so again, it brings you back to the constant yo-yo in and out of dieting all the time to see results only to then gain it all back, right? There's no exit strategy. All right. So here's probably the most important thing, is that there's no plan after the diet. So when you stop doing the thing, like, what do you do next? That is the problem. And believe it or not, you don't need to be dieting 365 days in order to see those long-term results that you want. In fact, let me get the mute everybody here.
What did you not do this? You're angry.
Okay. So a very small percentage of your year should be spent dieting. So if you're finally ready to start seeing progress, the progress that you are seeking without restricting yourself to starvation, what I'm going to teach you today is really going to change your life. So who is ready to break up with the diets for good? Raise your hand. Although I can't see anybody's faces. You guys are hiding behind your black screens there. But yes, hopefully you guys are ready. Let me go back in here and read here. Amanda, that was me too. And now I'm week 5 or 6 of reverse. I'm excited to see where it takes me. Yay, good. Yeah, Christy and I have been working together on that. Have been with Faster Way for a long time. It never really had feedback on how to adapt after the 6 weeks. Have tried to figure it out on my own. Okay. I'm on week 1 of a reversal, and it feels like more of a mental challenge. Yeah, for sure. It is. You definitely have to trust the process and be willing to embrace the challenge, and trust the person who you're working with particularly. I think that's why it's really important to have some kind of leadership and coaching through that process. So, okay. So when you've been dieting for too long, or if you've been dieting for you're too deep in that deficit, or maybe there's other situations here where you are just unintentionally eating because you're busy, or you might think that you're eating enough, but really you're not. It eventually becomes harder and harder and harder for your body to lose fat and build muscle. So you eventually hit this plateau because your body adapts. Your metabolism down regulates, not because it's broken, but because that's what we are built to do. Okay. That's our way of protecting our body. Our metabolism comes down. So when you have, the only way at that point to see change is to keep dropping your calories. And at some point, there's not going to be anywhere else to go. You've dropped and you've dropped, and there's nowhere else to go. You've kind of bottomed out. The only way is to go up. So not only does that negatively impact your metabolism, it also causes hormonal downregulations, or what we call hormonal adaptations, particularly your thyroid, which is your master metabolic regulator. So that's very important. Your sex hormones, the leptin, which is your hunger hormone, all of those systems are downregulated, your metabolism and your hormones. During that deficit, your body conserves energy. So you naturally, without even knowing it, you move less. So instead of like fidgeting or kind of moving your body around, your body just stops moving as much. You burn less calories, your performance output is lower, and it's literally impossible to sustain that. So this is what we call metabolic adaptation. And hopefully through the Faster Way, as you work with me or whoever your coach is, you will learn that our strategies are set up for preventing metabolic adaptation. But you also kind of need to take it a step further and understand what kind of deficit you're in, how long you've been there, when it's time to come out of that deficit, and what you need to do next. Okay. So this is, when this happens, when you've gotten to this point where everything's kind of down regulated, this is when people think their metabolism is broke. They're like, it's broken. I don't know what else to do. I just can't. But your metabolism, like I said, is doing its job. It's adapting based on the signals that you give it. And it's really remarkable because you can train it. You can prime your metabolism. It's adaptable. It not only can be down regulated when you give it less food, it can be up regulated. You can prime your metabolism to handle more. Okay. So the best thing that you can do for your metabolism is to stop dieting all the time. Okay. You have to have an exit strategy in order to not only maintain the fat loss that you've achieved, but also be able to continue to see progress in the forward direction in a healthy way. So you have to be able to pull yourself out of that deficit, but also knowing that you have a strategy in place. Like there's a plan. Okay. You can do it in a strategic way. It's not just like you just stop what you're doing and then you go back to whatever you did before. That's not a strategy that we should be implementing. And this whole concept that I'm getting ready to share with you, it's not sexy. It's not appealing. You're like, Lauren, I still have 20, 30, 50 pounds to lose. It's not sexy, but it is necessary. So you have to break up with your diet if you want to break this cycle that you've been in for years and years and years. So, okay, let's get into it. Nutritional periodization. Let's talk about what that is. First and foremost, yo-yo dieting, like starting a diet, doing the diet, losing the weight, and then going back to what you were doing before. That's not the same thing as actually phasing your nutrition. Okay, so those are two different things here. Nutritional periodization still takes commitment and consistency and effort. It still is, you still have a plan. It's not just like you start and stop, right? So it's basically like the process of spending time at different caloric intakes based on what goals you have. So there's different phases. There's a fat loss phase. There's a reverse diet. There's maintenance, and then there's bulking. Okay. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on bulking because it's not really something that I do a whole lot with my clients in particular. I kind of feel like bulking and surplus is more for like, again, those performance athletes and really wanting those like big muscle gains and stuff like that. So this process of phasing your nutrition is going to facilitate that long-term success. So why do I encourage you to understand, learn more, and actually implement this periodized nutrition into your life? Number one, it prevents that metabolic adaptation that we have been talking about. Okay. So that is one of the main things. We are protecting our metabolism. We are priming it. We are making sure that it doesn't adapt and that you don't get into that plateau situation where nothing is working. Okay. And another thing is most people, women especially, we want to look toned. We want to get lean and toned, right? Lean, tone, and fit. Okay. So to look toned, that word's kind of funny because it's like, what even is that? But anyways, you have to lose fat, right? Of course, but there has to be muscle underneath that fat if you actually want to look toned. And so in order to build muscle, in order to get that toned look, you cannot spend your entire year trying to lose fat, trying to be in a deficit and lose weight. You have to spend a lot of your time in what I call maintenance, okay, to make sure that you have enough nutrients in order to build muscle. And that is really difficult to achieve when you're in a constant caloric deficit. So when you spend most of your time at maintenance, eating enough food, your body, you will actually increase your basal metabolic rate, okay? Which means that when you are sitting down doing absolutely nothing, you're burning more calories. So this is your way of boosting your metabolism through eating enough, and specifically eating enough protein in combination with strength training, basically. And we'll talk about that here in a second. So then you get to sprinkle in these short-term phases of fat loss where you do go into a deficit, okay, a few times maybe throughout the year, and that sheds that layer of fat. You reveal that muscle that you actually worked really hard to build. And that is where you get the body composition changes that you're actually looking for, that toned look, or, you know, just being able to burn more fat more efficiently because your metabolic rate is so much higher. Now, strength training through this whole process is always going to be something that you should prioritize. Okay. I'm always going to tell you that strength training should be the forefront of your fitness routine. Always, every single phase, doesn't matter. You should always be strength training particularly with progressive overload. That's prioritized. That's prioritized for optimal health. It's prioritized for body composition changes. Now, let's get into the 4 phases of the dieting cycle. And I'm going to spend some time talking about each one. So get your pen and paper out if you want to make some notes here. This may be the time to kind of start writing some things down. The first thing I want to do before I start getting into the different phases and explaining all of that is to teach you how to actually calculate your maintenance, okay? And what I mean by calculating your maintenance is your estimated maintenance, okay? This is something that we have to estimate. It's not an actual number. And the way we do that is we can do it a couple different ways. You can use a TDEE calculator. You can use a macro calculator like the Faster Way app. You can use the MyFitnessPal or whatever, macro calculator that you use, okay? And you can simply select maintain, okay? And that would give you your maintenance calories. Or you can simply take your current weight and multiply that by 14 or 16, okay? So you can get a range. This would be your estimated maintenance range, okay? So let me just do a quick, I'm gonna give you an example. So if you weigh 150 pounds and you multiply that by 14, that's 2,100. And then you multiply that by 16, that's 2,400. So you can estimate that your maintenance calories are going to fall somewhere between 2,100 and 2,400 calories. And that's based on your activity. So if you're really sedentary, it's going to obviously be on that lower end. Now, the reason why I say that this is just estimated is because we actually have to do the work in order to figure out what your true maintenance calories will be. And the calculators, it's good to get an estimate, but the online calculators, they only know what they know, right? They don't know what your previous dieting history is. They don't know if you've been eating 500 calories a day or if you've been eating 2,500 calories a day previously. They don't know what you've done to your metabolism prior to simply entering in your age, your height, your weight, and your activity level. They also don't know what kind of exercise you do. They don't know if you're just running all the time or if you're actually strength training. Okay, so that plays into things. They don't know your health history either. So they don't know if you're diabetic or if you have, certain other health conditions that may play into really customizing macronutrients for you. So when I personally set my custom macros for my clients, we go over all of this in detail so that we can really get a personalized approach to their macro goals. And then we can, kind of get an estimate of where their maintenance is once we get to that point of figuring that out. Okay. So that's how you can kind of calculate what your estimated maintenance might be. Now, like I said, if you have been dieting for your whole entire life and you've been eating less than 1,200 calories and, that's what you've been doing for a really long time, your metabolism has downregulated and your true maintenance may be lower than what that calculator is actually telling you. Okay. Same on the mental change, but it's been crazy. I've been eating more than ever in my life and losing inches in the reverse process. Hallelujah. Yeah. Okay. So if anybody else has if you have a story, a testimony that you want to share about reversing, now is a really good time to share that, because I can tell you once we get into this and I start explaining the phases, y'all are going to be like, I don't know about that. I'm going to gain 50 pounds when you tell me to eat more. I know it's coming. So any testimonies are welcomed here. All right. When you first start a cut phase, how long do we stay in that? I'm going to tell you right now. All right. So we're getting into that right now. The first phase of the dieting cycle is called the fat loss phase, right? So this is what also referred to as a cut or the dieting phase, caloric deficit, all those things mean the same thing. That is when your caloric intake is intentionally lower. You're eating less than what you need to maintain your current body fat stores. So, as I've already mentioned, this adds stress on your body, which is why you don't want to stay there very long. You don't want to spend the majority of your time in a deficit. However, most people stay there forever, right? Or they're either all in and they're all out. Okay. They're in a deficit or they're not doing anything at all. That's why they're constantly looking for the next quick fix, the next fad diet, in or out. So what we want to do is we want to phase this. Okay. It should be phased or periodized with other nutritional phases for optimal health and long-term success. So what does that look like? What does a deficit look like? A deficit, to me personally, means that you are eating from anywhere from like 10 to 25% of your maintenance. Okay. So now you've used your calculator, you know what your estimated maintenance is, and then you can figure out what that deficit should look like depending on how aggressive you want to be, right? Now, if you have a significant amount of weight to lose, you can be a little more aggressive. If you have a very little amount of weight to lose, you don't need to be so aggressive. But the main kicker here is that you don't want to be so aggressive that you can't sustain that deficit. So consistency is always going to be greater than intensity here. And adherence is key. If you can't adhere to what you're doing, so this also plays into the fact of the Optavia, the keto, the everything, the diets. If you can't see yourself doing this long term, or if you can't adhere to it consistently, if you're constantly starting over on Monday, maybe you're in too deep of a deficit. Okay. Maybe it's just that you're not eating enough. So I also think that it's important to kind of look at the calendar and think about when the best time is for you to be in a deficit and figure out, like, can I adhere to this right now? How aggressive can I be right now? How miserable do I want to be? I'm just kidding. But really, it really is important to kind of consider if you can be consistent or not in a deficit, because you are restricting. So I think it's really cool to be in your deficit or your fat loss phase earlier in the year. So like January, even through, April, May, and then through your summer months, you kind of get to relax a little bit when you start to reverse or spend some time at maintenance. So you have higher calories, you have more macros, you have more flexibility in order for you to really enjoy those summer months. So I think that's a really good plan to have. Now, most of the time you are in a deficit, you set your deficit based on calories, okay? Because that's a little bit more precise, like you can actually control that a little bit more. The other thing is to increase your cardio or your output, and that would be through cardio, but that's just, I just don't really spend a lot of time there. I would rather you spend more time focusing on your calories. And then also in this phase, it's really important, as I mentioned, to get enough protein and prioritize strength training. Okay. Really important to do that in a deficit so that you preserve muscle. All right. So if you're significantly under eating your protein needs, you're going to be in a deficit. You're going to be losing weight, but it's going to be muscle in addition to fat. And we don't want that. We want to preserve that muscle mass, because if you've caught on by now, you will understand that more muscle on your body means higher metabolism, right? More muscle equals a higher metabolism. So we want to preserve that muscle that you have instead of actually in a low, in a huge deficit, losing muscle in addition to fat. So the pros of a deficit is obviously you're going to have a leaner body, right? So you're losing fat, and you improve your health when you drop to a healthy body fat percentage. So there's definitely pros and advantages of being in a deficit. But there's also, it's also important to understand, what is safe, what you can adhere to, and also what comes next after that. So when you're in a deficit, it's important to look at multiple progress markers in order to determine how successful this deficit really is. And like I said, one of the main key things is adherence. If you're all over the place, not consistent at all, like there's no point, right? Because you're just going to be spinning your wheels. But in terms of progress, I want you looking at pictures. I want you looking at measurements, and I really want you focusing on biofeedback. So biofeedback meaning like your energy, your sleep, your strength, your mood, your hunger levels, all of that stuff. Yes, it's okay to get on the scale if you can like take the, remove the mental connection with it. But those other things will also come into play when you're determining your progress, and those will also be important as well. Okay. So here's something really interesting. If you are new to strength training and you are in a deficit, you will definitely be able to see body composition changes without the scale moving. Okay. So that's a lot of times my clients, when they first start the Fast Way, they're like, my pictures are amazing. I have I've gone down a pant size and I feel so good, but the scale hasn't moved at all. Or maybe it's just moved a couple pounds. And it's because you are actually gaining muscle while simultaneously losing fat, which is amazing. So I always say it's great to be a beginner because those two things can happen simultaneously, and you can actually build muscle really fast when you're new to strength training. Now, if you've been strength training for a while, you may not have that same success in terms of being able to quickly put on muscle. So if you are not seeing any movement on the scale or in your measurements particularly, then while you think you may be at this deficit, it may not be deep enough to see quick results, or it could be, like I said, an adherence or consistency problem where you're maybe just not in a deficit at all because you are overeating on the weekends, or you're not tracking, accurately, or that kind of thing. So eventually, once you, cut, once you get really low in calories, there's just really nowhere else to go. Your weight loss will slow down. Your metabolism down regulates to match your energy, the energy that you are giving it. So the calories you're giving it. We have to really be mindful of this and kind of have, it's really nice to have a hard stop. Okay. So pick a date on your calendar. You're going to get in and you're going to get out. So here are my recommendations for being in a deficit. If you have 15, 20 maybe pounds to lose, you know, not a significant amount of weight to lose, 8 weeks to 12 weeks or even 16 weeks in a fat loss phase is significant enough, in my opinion. If you have a lot of weight to lose, if you are significantly overweight, you can kind of stand to be in a diet longer. And as I said, be a little more aggressive with that deficit and maybe stay there for 20 to even up to 24 weeks. Okay. Now, that's just kind of a ballpark. It's totally dependent on how you feel, what your biofeedback is, what your results are, have you hit a plateau, etc. So we need to have an exit strategy, the next phase of the diet, and that's where a reverse diet comes in. So we're going to get into what a reverse diet is. Hold on just a second. Okay, sorry. Now, first, before we talk about what a reverse looks like, we need to understand what our body is telling us. We need to be mindful of the signs and symptoms it's giving us in order to know if, you know, if it's time to adjust your macros, if it's time to kind of come away from this deficit. So again, having that phase, you know, that clear date where you're going to stop this diet is good, but there's also other things that can come into play that might mean you need to get out earlier or whatever. So 8 to 24 weeks in that deficit is what we mentioned already. But if you are already super low calorie and not seeing any fat loss, okay, if you're hungry, if your sleep is affected, if your energy is affected, your mood, if you're constantly obsessing over food or thinking about food, it's time to stop dieting. If you're not seeing any progress in the gym. So if you are lifting weights and you've been lifting the same amount of weight, you aren't seeing any, you aren't able to lift heavier, you're not able to progress through those workouts, that's an issue. Adherence, of course, I've said that multiple times. If you're like binging and purging, unable to be consistent, constantly starting over on the Mondays, weekend binging, you know, that's really a really good sign that you just need to get out, right? If you're busy and you forget to eat, or you're just not hungry, but you're eating really low calories, that's a sign. I've mentioned this a couple times. If you are always on a diet, and then even if you've reached your ideal weight, okay, so that's another scenario where you've hit your goals. Now what? Okay. If you regain your weight back because you don't know how to sustain your weight loss. So again, it goes back to those diets where you just really don't have a plan for after you've lost the weight. If you are moody, irritable, your sex drive is low, your cycles as a woman, a menstrual cycle is irregular, any of those things are really good signs that your deficit is too low or you've been there too long. And then your relationship with food, I think this is really important to understand. Like, that's one of those things that you need to be careful of when you're dieting, is constantly thinking about food, stressed about tracking your macros, you're anxious, you don't want to go out to social settings or out to dinner with friends, you're worried about what you're going to do on vacation, all of those things. You might go over your calories. It is not worth risking your mental health to stay there longer. So all of these signs are signs that you need to stop dieting. And a reverse diet, like what I call the diet after the diet, is how we are going to restore all of that biofeedback. We're going to restore your metabolism, and we actually get to prime your body for higher calories during your next deficit or your next fat loss phase. Okay, so a reverse diet is the second phase. This is what happens as we transition away from being in a caloric deficit to then working towards maintenance. Now, this is the process of slowly adding back your calories, generally in carbs and fat, okay? Because protein should be the consistent always. You should always be eating enough protein no matter what phase you're in order to get us to our maintenance calories. So this is the vehicle. to get us to our destination, and our destination is maintenance. So by adding back those calories in a controlled way, okay, so it's not just like you just add it all at once, although you could, but most of the time we do it kind of slowly. You can actually maintain your fat loss that occurred during that deficit. But there's also so many things that can happen in a positive light. Okay, so during a reverse, your metabolism increases because you're giving it more food, more energy. Your metabolism upregulates. Your mental and physical, the strain on your body decreases. So the stress on your body, which will improve your mood. You'll start sleeping better, and body composition changes happen. What is so important to understand about this phase is that weight loss is not the purpose, okay? Can you lose fat during a reverse? Yes. Can you lose weight? Yes. Can you see positive changes in your body composition? 100%, okay? That is part of it. But the purpose is to recover your metabolic rate so that you can eat more food while maintaining your current weight, so that you improve adherence. It is sustainable. You're not constantly feeling restricted. Your biofeedback is restored, and it improves the likelihood of future fat loss. Okay, so we're setting ourselves up for success in the future through this process. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, I still have so much weight to lose. This is not going to work for me. Like, no, this is not it. Okay, I get that. If you have a significant amount of weight to lose, though, it's very likely that you're not going to lose that all in one fat loss phase. And hopefully at this point, you can kind of understand why it's so important to prime your metabolism. So as a review, when your calories are really low, your movement is low because you have low energy, your body stops responding. So it wants to conserve that energy, and it burns less calories. Eventually you get to a place where it just stops responding. So we have to do something different. Now, how do you reverse? There's a couple different ways that you can do this, depending on who you ask. The simplest way, if I'm just going to teach you all right now how to do this on your own, is to simply start adding 100 calories to your current calorie goal. And you've already estimated your maintenance. So the first thing you want to do is calculate what your estimated maintenance is. So that kind of gives you a ballpark of where you're headed. And you start adding 100 calories every single week in the form of carbs or fat. Okay. Now, if your protein is not where it should be, we need to work on that first. So generally speaking, my recommendations for protein are going to be somewhere between 0.8 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And I usually work around the 1 gram per pound of body weight, typically. Now, if you have a significant amount of weight to lose, that can look a little bit different, okay? Because you can't eat 280 grams of protein. But you can base that on what maybe your ideal weight is, and then you do that calculation from there. So first and foremost, we want to make sure your protein is where it needs. It's falling within that recommended amount, okay? And then when you start adding in calories, you're going to add that in the form of carbs or fat. So if you take 100 calories, we've learned, did I teach you all that? No, that wasn't you guys. Let me teach you something here. So carbs have 4 calories per gram, okay? Fat has 9 calories per gram. So if you take 100 calories and you add that in the form of carbs, that's 25 grams of carbs. If you add it in fat, it's 11 grams of fat. If you want to do a combination of the two, so you're kind of doing a little bit of carbs and a little fat, that would be 14 grams of carbs and 5 grams of fat, okay? So 100 calories, you can either add it in the form of carbs or fat or a combination of both. Your protein stays consistent throughout all of these phases, all right? So that's one way to do it. Fairly simple. You're just adding 100 calories, either in fat or carbs. The other way is to increase it in increments, 5 to 10% increments every single week, okay? So If you're eating 1,200 calories, you bump that up by 5%. So you're adding on 5% to the 1,200. And then you do that week over week. 10% is a little bit more aggressive, but it's not unrealistic. Okay. So that's anywhere from like adding 50 to 150 calories per week, which is pretty safe. It's pretty slow. You're not going to, be jumping up really, really quickly. So we do this week over week. We are in this process. You monitor your biofeedback, you monitor your weight, your measurements, your photos, and your consistency is also really important. Okay. So if you bump up and you're not consistent, you don't need to do another increase until you consistently can hit those macros or those calories. So as long as I did say weight, and, we preach in the Faster Way that the scale sucks, and it really does. Okay. There's a lot of reasons why the scale is not going to be your friend. Especially if you are one of those lucky ones that can build muscle and lose fat simultaneously. But if you can remove the emotional connection from the scale and simply use it as a tool to collect data, I do suggest that you get your average weight each week through this reverse, because that's kind of going to determine when you reach your maintenance. All right. So if your weight jumps up by a couple of pounds, then I generally say, let's stay there. So you've increased your calories by 100 for 1 week and your weight jumps up a little bit. Well, stay there and see what happens for another week. Okay. And then if it stays the same, if your weight does not jump up or you lose weight, then you can continue to make those increases. Biofeedback, as I said, is key. So restoring biofeedback is 1000% the driving factor here. So your sleep, your hunger, your mood, your energy, your strength. And the first signs of being at maintenance is that your biofeedback has improved and that the weight fluctuations stop. So you should be maintaining a consistent average weight. All right. Meaning that, it's not fluctuating more than 1 to 3 pounds. We can all fluctuate a few pounds here and there just based on different things like food volume in your stomach, or more carbs equals a little more water retention, or your menstrual cycle. You might, it's not gaining fat. It's just that your weight can fluctuate a little bit. But if you are gaining weight through this process, so like say you went 2 weeks and you've gained weight both weeks and you're visibly feeling like you're carrying more fat on your body, then we need to drop back down. So you drop back to that, like take away 100 calories and call it your maintenance. All right. So we've hit maintenance. Okay. What's important to understand about a reverse, about maintenance, is that the only way you're going to gain fat is if you're in a surplus. So if you are eating over your maintenance, then you can gain fat. If you are reversing, you're still in a deficit. Technically, you haven't hit that maintenance calories in order to maintain your weight. You're still in a deficit. So you're not in a surplus when you're reversing. And even at maintenance, as long as you don't overshoot your maintenance, you should not be gaining fat. Okay. So you're still in a deficit as you work your way up to that maintenance. And maintenance does not mean that you're in a surplus. That's two different things. Okay. One of the things that we're getting a little lengthy here, so I'm going to try to speed through the rest of this, but a couple things during your reverse and at maintenance, it's really important to keep your NEAT movement high. I stress this with my clients all the time. 10,000 steps is a really great goal to have. Being active outside of your programmed workouts is really important, and it really plays into fat loss. Other goals that you should have through this process should not be fat loss or weight loss. Okay. You should be working on your relationship with food. You should be working on the sustainability of this lifestyle. You should be working on lifting heavier so that you're adding muscle and priming your metabolism. Okay. So the reverse typically can take anywhere from, most of my clients, it takes 4 to 8 weeks or so, but that's totally dependent on how your body responds. Okay. There's no like set amount of time that may take for one person versus the other. All right. So what happens next? Maintenance is what's next in this cycle. And that doesn't start until your reverse ends, right? This is where the magic happens, though. This is where the goods are. This is where you should be spending the most of your time. This is when you are eating calories, you're consuming calories that will equal the number of calories you're burning. All right, so this is where your body thrives. Ideally, you should spend the majority of your year at maintenance. But if you're wanting, like, how long do I need to stay here? I'm ready to go back into a deficit and lose this weight. So if you're thinking that, my general recommendation is that you stay at maintenance for a minimum of 3 months, up to about 6 months, okay? Or ideally, you want to be at maintenance for as long as you've been in your dieting phase, okay? So you should not be, though, dieting more throughout the year than you are at maintenance, right? So for me personally, I may do one cut in a year, and it's generally at the beginning of the year. And then the rest of the time I get to spend at maintenance. But I have actually kind of hit my goals and am comfortable where I'm at. You know, you could do a couple more of those cycles through the fat loss phase if you want to or need to. All right. So at this point, your energy levels are high, your hormone balance is restored. All right. Your sleep is great. Your performance in the gym is high. You are crushing your workouts. You are lifting heavier than you ever have. You are building muscle. Okay. Now, we talked about how we get there. It's through reverse dieting. The problem with maintenance is that people never want to do this. Okay. They never get there because they're scared to gain weight. Or they're impatient and they don't want to stay there long enough because they're ready to get back into that fat loss phase. And that makes it really hard. So again, adherence is really key through this. Consistency is key through this. Trusting the process is really key. Knowing that you kind of just have to be patient in this season, knowing that the next time you do a fat loss phase, you're going to see incredible results because of the work that you have put in this maintenance phase. So dieting down regulates your metabolism. The goal through maintenance is to retrain your metabolism to handle more food and really set you up for success in the future. At maintenance, we get to prime your body for higher caloric intake during your next cutting phase, which means that the next time you're in that fat loss phase, you don't have to cut as low. All right. So you don't have to be as miserable. And you don't have to stay there for as long to see results. It happens quicker. Progress markers or goals to have throughout maintenance is that your weight stays consistent, right? We're not fluctuating a ton, maybe a couple pounds, but it stays fairly consistent. Your measurements are staying consistent as well. We're focused on those non-physique goals. We're not focused on fat loss or weight loss. We are, focused more on strength training and monitoring our strength and progression in the gym. And again, like I said, being able to freely live when it not being constantly on a diet. Okay. So there's so much food freedom and a mental part of this process as well. And there's different possible outcomes when it comes to maintenance. You can lose weight through a reverse. You can lose weight at maintenance. You may just simply maintain your weight, or you may, like I said, gain a few pounds in food volume and a little water weight, Now, the last phase is the bulk or like a calorie surplus. And I really honestly don't spend a lot of time in this phase or teaching this because it's just, I feel like you can gain muscle at maintenance and unless you're like bodybuilding and doing all that stuff, I really don't know that it's necessary. But during this, the idea is that if you really want to put on muscle and build that muscle on your body, you have to consume more calories than you're actually burning. So once you've kind of gotten through this cycle, you've been at maintenance for that, recommended time, that cycle kind of starts again and you get to go back into that fat loss phase and you get to see, shed that layer of fat and then ultimately see the body composition changes that you want. All right, so that is the different phases of the dieting cycle. Hopefully this was super helpful for you all and eye-opening, and hopefully it gives you kind of some hope for the future for you to not have to be constantly dieting, that there is another way. Let me see here. Reverse dieting is amazing. I'm stronger than I've ever been and eating more than I ever have before. Trust the process. Love learning more about it. Yay. Yes. Thank you, Jessica. You look incredible, by the way. Christy, yes, trust the process. I'm in a reverse now trying to find my maintenance. It's been great and I'm not gaining or losing. That's great. But I can tell it's what my body needs. I'm actually hungry in the morning and I never was before. That is because your metabolism is like, hello, I'm awake now. I've also changed my fasting hours, yes, to 12 to 14. That's great. Better for my thyroid. Totally agree. Maintenance through the summer is my goal. Worried that increasing calories will be a temptation to fill those calories with less nutritional foods because they fit. Yes. And this is one of the hardest things about maintenance, is kind of getting lax. Now, does maintenance mean that you get more flexibility? Absolutely. Does maintenance mean that you can maybe take a couple of days off from tracking and not have to be so rigid? And, you know, yes, there's so much more flexibility there. But you also still have to realize that we need to fuel our body with whole foods in order for us to feel our very best and to see the results that we want. So, you know, there is some discipline, I guess you would say, that comes with that. I try on clothes that I haven't been able to get into. I strictly go by my clothes while occasionally look at the scale. It works for me. Yeah. How long did you stay in a cut again? Maybe 8 weeks, probably not even that long. How long do you give a fat loss phase to see results to determine if the deficit is deep enough? If you're going like 2 to 4 weeks with consistent effort, you know, 2 weeks, I think you should be able to see changes. What if we feel like we should reverse because of the mental reasons, but still want to lose a few pounds? 1000%. Like I said, this is not just about weight loss. It's about setting yourself up for that long-term success, and the different phases are going to come with different goals. And the mental part of that is really important. That was my next question. If we aren't able at our weight goal, when do we go into reverse or maintenance? Yes, I've already mentioned all of that. Hopefully you understood that, you know, if you have more weight to lose, that doesn't mean that you don't still go through this cycle. The reverse diet of adding carbs, fat is giving me motivation to adhere to my fat loss phase tighter. So I get to do this reverse. Yes, exactly. So let's set an end date for that so that you can have that date to look forward to and get out. What were the carbs and fat numbers again for 100 calories? Let me go back here. I think it was 25 grams of carbs or 11 grams of fat. Or if you take the two of those, if you divide it up, it would be 14 grams of carbs and 5 grams of fat. Okay. Yeah. So I'm not at my goal weight and doing a reverse because I wasn't seeing progress. I was in a plateau. Yeah. How do you approach strength training during reverse and maintenance? Lift as heavy as possible. Is the guidance through these phases something that you help us with when we are VIP? Yes. Yes. So we have if you are not a Faster Way client, you might be like, what does that mean? But through the 6 weeks, you're set up in a deficit. And then at the end, we talk about, you know, what are your next steps? And generally speaking, working through that reverse is kind of the next steps in the VIP process. I have a macros form you can fill out. We can work through it that way. I also offer one-on-one consults with my VIP clients to work through macro adjustments. Okay. So hopefully you guys learned so much today and this was interesting and not too boring since we have been here with each other for over an hour now. But last thing, I just want you to kind of close your eyes and just imagine that, you know, imagine the end of the struggle. Imagine that there is finally an end to the years of struggling with your health, with your weight. And what if you could now understand that you never have to be searching for the next best thing, or that you never have to do another quick fix, another restrictive, miserable diet again? What if you could lose the weight once and never put it back on? What if you could finally get to a place where you didn't feel like you ever had to diet again? That you were actually living? How freeing would that be? So to do that, I want to encourage you all to hire a coach to help you support you and educate you, and to give you that roadmap so that you have a plan in order to get there. And of course, I know you're scared. Everybody is scared to eat. They're scared to eat more because they're afraid that they're going to gain weight. And I just want to remind you that if what you're doing right now isn't working, you probably wouldn't be here. So let's just try something new. What is the disadvantage to trying something new? Okay, start with an open mind, trust the process. And like I said, you can decide to stay stuck in this cycle, or you can break the cycle for good. And hopefully today is the tipping point for you guys. So I want to invite you guys, if you are not already a member of the Faster Way, to join my next round. It starts April 11th. I want to teach you guys how to eat to support a healthy metabolism, to avoid the chronic dieting, to avoid the weight loss plateaus, and develop sustainable healthy habits that will yield lasting change. It's different than the fad diets because you have a coach who truly cares for you and who wants you to see you be successful long term, and not just right now while you're a Faster Way client of mine. So I did want to mention really quickly that any person who registers between now and the next 24 hours will be entered into a drawing to win a free round of the Faster Way to Fat Loss with me as your coach. So I'm going to just put that link here in the chat feature, and you guys are welcome to register for that. Oh, looks like Olivia already put it there. Thanks, Liv. Okay, so yes, thank you all so much for being here. This was wonderful. I will be recording this and sending it out to you guys in an email. So be on the lookout for that here very soon. And yeah, so hopefully this gives you something to look forward to, just like Stephanie said. Thank you all so much, and I hope you guys have a great weekend. Bye.